So Galilee is referred to in the book of Isaiah, chapter 9, verse 1, which
This is what I was waiting to get to.
which in the English is chapter 8, verse 23,
Yes.
as Galil HaGoyim,
Mm-hmm.
Galilee of the Gentiles, or Galilee of the nations.
Yes.
Now, I want to stop here for a second. I've had people talk to me, and they think the word Goyim is an insult that Jews use to refer to Gentiles.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there are some Jews who use it that way. I haven't encountered that.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a community of Jews who, how do I say it, were not politically correct when it came to non-Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a slur for non-Jews, and it wasn't goyim.
Mm-hmm.
I won't even say what it was because it's quite offensive.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't goyim. It's something that means abomination.
Mm-hmm.
So if a Jew wants to refer to non-Jews in a negative way, he doesn't say goyim. Goyim just means the people of the nations.
Mm-hmm.
And Israel's called a goy. Israel's called a nation. But here, Galilee of the nations in Isaiah chapter 8, verse 23 in the English, 9:1 in the Hebrew, raises the question, why is it called Galilee of the nations? And the real answer is we don't know 100% why, but it probably dates back to 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 11, where Solomon is building the temple and he needs large cedar trees for the roof and some of the supporting beams. And he gets them from King Hiram, King Hiram of Tyre, of Tsor. In Hebrew, the city's called Tsor. Tyre to this day is a city on the coast of Lebanon. At the time, it was a Phoenician city. Phoenician is what the Greeks called the Canaanites. So it's a Canaanite city. Mm-hmm. And Solomon, as a payment for all of this wood that he's given, gives 20 cities in the Galilee to Hiram of Tyre.
Yeah.
And so why do we have Galilee of the Gentiles, Galilee of the nations? Probably because Solomon gave it over to Hiram.
Do you remember what Hiram said?
Tell me what he said.
About the quality of those cities?
What does he say?
These are the cities you give me? In other words,
you're saying he wasn't very grateful.
Well, no, he was saying these are not. In other words, I guess when I hear in Isaiah and then also going forward, just geography, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, present day, what was happening there and who was there. I mean, it just seems like when you ask the question about why would he send him there, beyond the fact that it's Israel, but this thought from Isaiah that says, when I read Isaiah that said Galilee of the Gentiles, and then when I thought about Yeshua being in the Galilee, I've heard a lot of people go on and on about that, but it is kind of cool that that is where he came from, especially in terms of the mission of not just reaching those that were with him, but reaching people beyond.
All right. So now that you drew us into this, here's something really interesting. So let's read it. Verse 11 of 1 Kings chapter 9. King Hiram of Tyre, having supplied Solomon with cedar and cypress, timber and gold, as much as he desired, King Solomon gave to Hiram 20 cities in the land of Galilee. But when Hiram came from Tyre to see the cities that Solomon had given him, it says, Lo yashru be'einav, they were not straight in his eyes. He didn't like them. Therefore, he said, what kind of cities are these that you have given me, Achi, my brother? I love he calls him Achi. So they are called the land of Kavul in Hebrew to this day. What does Kavul mean in biblical Hebrew? Maybe it means bound. It's not clear, and probably it's not a Hebrew word. Mm-hmm. Kavul is probably a Canaanite word in the Canaanite language. And so here we have a word play. We talk all the time about word plays, which scholars call paranomosia. It's a play on words, word puns, that the name Jacob has to do with the word in Hebrew. Here there's a word play with the word kavul, which may have been understood at the time of Solomon, but here we hear that today and we're like, does it mean bound? Does it mean like Baal maybe? It's not clear what it means at all. Apparently it's something disparaging, right? Because he doesn't like it. So that was Galilee of the nations. So think about this. From the time of Hiram, these cities are looked down upon, these cities of the Galilee. Now, this isn't the entire Galilee. Galilee is a large region, but it was 20 cities in the Galilee. Now let's fast forward to the time of Zerubbabel, who is the leader who brings the Jews back from Babylonia. And we're given the list of the different people and where they settled. And all of those people are settling in what today we would call Judea. That is, they're settling in areas that were the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah during the first temple period. So we think of I thought of as a kid, we're coming back from Babylon, and I think, oh, it's they're settling every nook and cranny of Israel. Not at all. It's a tiny little province in what today is central Israel. Doesn't even include some major parts of Israel that we think of. Doesn't include Samaria. Doesn't include the Jezreel Valley. Doesn't include the northern Jordan Valley. I mean, these are the breadbasket of Israel is not included. Doesn't include the Galilee at all. And what happens is there are Jews who are living in these areas in southern Israel, and there is the war against the Greeks. The Greeks come and they want to wipe out the Jewish faith. This is the famous story of Hanukkah. We're not going to get into the whole thing. You ask about the connotation of Greek. For a lot of Jews, the connotation of Greek was persecution.
Yes.
It was saying Greek was almost the same as saying expunge my Jewish identity.
There it is.
That was the understanding. To this day, by the way, there are many Jews where you talk about Hellenize or you use the word assimilate, and those are dirty words.
Yes.
Because assimilate means give up my Jewish identity. Hellenize means adopt somebody else's culture instead of my culture and faith. So Greek has very negative connotations. Even though Rabbi Judah the Prince, he preferred Greek over Aramaic. As bad as Greek was, Aramaic was considered worse to him. Jews who are in southern Israel, and they're persecuted by the Greeks, and they want to wipe out the Jewish faith. That becomes the Hanukkah story. There's a war with the Maccabees, or actually they're called the Hasmoneans in Jewish sources. The Hasmoneans, the Hashmonaim, they fight against the Greeks, and they have some kind of limited victory. They win, they lose, they win, they lose. It goes back and forth. Finally, some Jews during this period are able to get a foothold in the Galilee.
Yes.
So we don't hear much about the Galilee until finally we fast forward until after Isaiah. And by the way, Isaiah 9:1 might be talking about something referred to in 1 Kings 15:29, which is the exile of the Galilee in the time of Tiglath-Pileser III,
Yes.
approximately 732 BC. Isaiah 9, and that whole context is about the Assyrian invasion. That is, King Ahaz is about to be attacked by the king of Israel and the Aramean king of Damascus, and God promises him that the king of Israel will be destroyed. And then in chapter 9, he mentions the Galilee of the nations, which might be the exile there under Tiglath-Pileser III. Now jump forward to around the year 161, 160 BC. It's during the time of Judah the Maccabee, when he is the leader of the Hasmoneans. And we read that there is an emissary that comes from the Galilee. And first, we're not going to read the whole thing. First Maccabees 5:14-23, we hear about how the Galilee of the nations, and their nations no doubt means Gentiles, absolutely 100%. We're told there the Galilee of the nations want to wipe out the Jews in the Galilee. And so they send an army, a military force under Simon, the brother of Judah, Simon the Hasmonean, up to the Galilee, and he defeats this army that's come to attack the Jews. And then it says in verse 23 of 1 Maccabees 5, then Simon took the Jews of Galilee and Arbata with their wives and children and all they possessed and led them to Judea with great rejoicing. So, how many Jews could have possibly been in Galilee if he's able to empty the Galilee and bring these Jews to safety out of Galilee into Judea? Maybe there was 1,000 Jews, 2,000 Jews. I doubt there were that many. In other words, they understood this was part of the biblical land of Israel, and they wanted to settle the land that God gave them. So there were Jewish settlers, literally Jewish settlers in Galilee. And at some point, the local population of Galilee, who are called the Etrurians, and we'll talk about that in a minute, they decide we're going to kill all the Jews. And so they send a military expedition, and they bring the Jews out of Galilee back into Judea. You could say there was a similar thing that happened in modern times, which is that there were 10,000 Jews living in Gaza, which is part of the historical land of Israel.
Yes.
And the state of Israel, right or wrong, and I think they were wrong, but right or wrong said, we want to bring these Jews out so they don't get slaughtered by the Arabs. So we actually have a modern parallel to what happened. So First Maccabees 5:23, Galilee is Judenrein. It is free of Jews. There's not a single Jew in the Galilee because they'd be killed if they were living there. And then fast forward to Josephus' Antiquities, 13:318, and it's in the time of Judah Aristobulus. Judah Aristobulus is one of the 5 sons of John Hyrcanus, and he reigns for a single year, the year that's approximately 104 to 103 BCE. So we know exactly when he ruled, give or take a year. These numbers are approximate. It says, Judah Aristobulus conferred many benefits on his own country. This is Josephus writing. And made war against Etruria, and added a great part of it to Judea, and compelled the inhabitants, if they would continue in that country, to be circumcised and to live according to the Jewish laws. So he conquers the Galilee, this area of Etruria. Now, Etruria was a large area, what today covers parts of Syria and Lebanon. He didn't conquer all of that. He only conquered the part that today we would call the Galilee. So he's conquered this part of Etruria, and he says to the people there, convert or leave. And many of them, and this is actually unprecedented, with one exception in Jewish history. The other exception is John Hyrcanus, his father, did the same thing to the Idumeans. That is, the people who lived in what today is southern Judea.
Right.
Who had come and occupied southern Judea, the area around Hebron. Famously, Herod is the grandson of a forcibly converted Idumean. So they were forcibly converted to Judaism. And then Josephus goes on, and he quotes Strabo, who's a Greek historian. And Strabo, of course, is writing from the Greek perspective what he knows about Judah Aristobulus' conquest of the Galilee. He says, this man was a person of candor and very serviceable to the Jews, for he added a country to them, and obtained a part of the nation of the Etrurians for them, and bound them to them by the bond of circumcision of their genitals. Right? To Strabo, the Greek historian in Asia Minor, this is some bizarre, exotic ceremony that the Jews say, if you want to be part of our nation, you have to be circumcised. Right, to Josephus, it's just, okay, follow the Torah and be circumcised. So we have here, the Galilee is free of Jews. There's not a single Jew living in the Galilee in 1 Maccabees 5:23, around the year 160 BC. And then around 60 years later, a little less than 60 years later, it's conquered by Judah Aristobulus. And from then begins the Jewish settlement of the Galilee. And this actually ties in perfectly to what we read in Luke, right? In Luke, we hear about how there is this, there's this census that the Romans are carrying out. And we're told, well, you have to go back to your ancestral homeland. Why is his ancestral homeland Judah? Bethlehem of Judea. Why isn't it Nazareth? Because Nazareth was a Jewish settlement. The Jews came from Judea after the conquest of Judah Aristobulus, and they settled in northern Israel, including in Nazareth. You could literally say that Yeshua was a Jewish settler, and he was from a family who hadn't been that long in the Galilee, 100 years, right? What is that, maybe 3 or 4 generations, right? Wasn't that long in the Galilee, to the point where they remembered, yeah, we came back from Ephrata, from Bethlehem, from that little village near Jerusalem. And now we're in the Galilee in Nazareth. And so that's how Yeshua ends up in the Galilee.